So Pope Francis, with more really interesting commentary, this time about elections. Now he's talking about Argentina in specific here, but really applies all across the world. And it turns out he believes there should be free and fair elections, not compromised by outside money. Kind of sounds like a PAC I know. Maybe wolf-pac.com? Okay, you don't believe me? Let me give you the quotes. Pope Francis said, "We must achieve a free sort of election campaign, not financed." That's interesting. Almost sounds exactly like free and fair elections. Okay, well, let's get a little bit more specific. He says, because many interests come into play in the financing of an election campaign, and then they ask you to pay back. So the election campaign should be independent from anyone who may finance it. Bingo. That is exactly right. So now this is very interesting because the 5 judges on the Supreme Court who voted for Citizens United and saying, no, money won't corrupt politics, are all Catholic. And they often vote based on their religious dogma. They put a pretty face on it by saying, oh, constitutional principle this or that. But we've shown you over and over on this show the hypocrisy of people like Scalia, who will be for states' rights in one case and against states' rights in another case. The reality is their principles, so-called legal principles, do not match up over time at all. The only thing that matches up is they almost always vote in favor of their religious dogma. But now their religious dogma has changed a little bit because we have Pope Francis. He's their pope. He's their leader. So I'd love to see the cognitive dissonance going on in those 5 Catholics' heads, especially Scalia. I guarantee, oh, well, the Pope, I mean, does he really speak for Catholics? Yeah, he kind of does. That's, in the old words of George W. Bush, if my job had a title, it'd be Pope. That's pretty clear. So he says free and fair elections, no outside financing by private interests. He goes further. He talks about public financing. That's the second part of the Wolf-Pac amendment, wolf-pac.com. Go check it out. He says public financing would allow for me, the citizen, to know that I'm financing each candidate with a given amount of money. So the point he's making there is, look, if outside interests, a giant corporation, a really rich guy, gives money to the politicians for him to run his campaign, well, they're going to want payback, so those politicians are going to do those guys enormous favors. If the public finances the run of the politician, a lot of people might think short-term, like, oh man, I don't want to give money to the politicians. We pay their salaries anyways. And you knuckleheads, they give so much more in favors to the guys who bribe them. No, what the Pope is saying is right. He's saying if they take the money from us, they might actually serve us. And that's what we should do. We should give both sides the same amount of money so they can have a battle of ideas so we can have free and fair elections. I wonder if he's joined up Wolf-Pac yet. Could you imagine? One day I go back to see who signed up for Wolf-Pac that day, wolf-pac.com. Oh, look at this, Pope Francis. He's making calls for us. He's calling legislators in Indiana. That would be awesome. But look, this is a huge step. Now, I want to go to a part of the Supreme Court decision in Citizens United, and so that you could see how the position of those 5 Catholics on the Supreme Court is diametrically opposed to Pope Francis. Because they say the money in politics and these guys basically doing legal bribery is a good thing for democracy. How could they possibly say that? Look at the language that they use. They say, it is well understood that a substantial and legitimate reason, if not the only reason, to cast a vote for or to make a contribution to one candidate over another is that the candidate will respond by producing those political outcomes the supporter favors. Democracy is premised on responsiveness. So in the beginning, it sounded like they were saying the same thing Pope Francis says. Well, if you give the guy money, of course he's going to do what you want, right? That's why you gave him the money. That's why he took the money. But at the end, they go, that's wonderful. Democracy is based on responsiveness. See, they're being responsive to the people who bribed them. That's unbelievable. But that's the law of the land here in America. That's what we're going to change by getting a constitutional amendment that's going to go above their heads. And now apparently we have Pope Francis on our side. Now, one last thing about what the Supreme Court has done. They've also blocked public financing in this country. As Think Progress explains, in Arizona Free Enterprise Club versus Bennett, the court struck down a public financing system which provides extra funds to publicly financed candidates who become the target of large amounts of campaign spending. So when they did that, they came close to killing public financing in this country. So if a guy's getting money from the public to run, Great, let's make up numbers, he gets $1 million. But Sheldon Adelson comes in and gives his opponent $10 million, $20 million. Well, then you've ruined the public point of public financing. So the laws are written that if extra money comes in, it is matched, right? And of course, it depends on the jurisdiction. But that's roughly how it is. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't match it. No, the people doing the bribing get to have more money. God, they hate it when we have a real democracy. The only thing above the Supreme Court, other than the Pope, is a constitutional amendment. wolf-pac.com. Come join us. Come join the Pope. Let's go fix this thing, both in Argentina, the United States, and all over the world. But let's start here.